Zara's claws scraped against the metal floor of the transport station as she watched the last of her kind board the evacuation ships. The Catherian Council had made their decision final. She was deemed genetically inferior, her scales too dull, her telepathic abilities too weak to contribute to their species' survival on the new colony world. "Please," she had begged the council leader just hours before. "I can work harder than anyone. I'll take any position, do any task." The leader's cold eyes had dismissed her without consideration. "Your bloodline carries recessive traits that would weaken future generations. The colony needs only the strongest specimens. You will remain here until the planet's resources are depleted." Now, standing alone in the vast terminal, Zara felt the weight of abandonment crushing down on her chest. The evacuation was complete. Every Catherian had left except her. She was the last of her people on this dying world, sentenced to watch the sun grow dimmer each day until the planet could no longer sustain life. The human maintenance worker had been watching her from across the terminal. Marcus Chen had been part of the skeleton crew keeping the station operational during the evacuation. He'd seen countless species leave their dying worlds, but something about the lone Catherian touched something deep in his heart. Humans weren't supposed to interfere with other species' internal affairs. It was a strict rule enforced by the Galactic Federation. But Marcus had always been the type to help strays. Back on Earth, he'd rescued dozens of abandoned animals. This felt no different. "Hey!" he called out softly, approaching with careful steps. Catherians were known to be skittish around other species. "You okay there?" Zara turned, her large amber eyes reflecting the terminal's artificial lights. She'd heard about humans, their reputation for being unreasonably kind, sometimes to their own detriment. The other species often mocked them for it, calling them the bleeding hearts of the galaxy. "I am alone," she whispered in broken Standard Galactic. Her translator had been damaged during the rush to evacuate, making communication difficult. Marcus felt his heart break a little. He'd learned basic Catherian during his cultural sensitivity training, though he'd never expected to use it. "Where is your family, your people?" "Gone," Zara replied, switching to her native tongue. The musical quality of Catherian was beautiful, even when expressing pain. "They say I am not worthy. My genes are, how you say, bad." The maintenance worker's hands clenched into fists. He'd heard about the Catherian genetic policies, their obsession with biological perfection. It reminded him too much of humanity's own dark chapters in history. "That's not right," he said firmly. "Every being has worth." Zara studied this strange human. His brown hair was messy from work, his uniform stained with grease, and his hands calloused from manual labor. By Catherian standards, he would be considered extremely plain. But his eyes held a warmth she'd never seen before, even among her own people. "You believe this?" she asked. "Even about me?" "Especially about you," Marcus replied without hesitation. "Look, I know we just met, but no one should die alone. Is there anything I can do to help?" The question hung in the air between them. Zara's mind raced through possibilities she'd never dared consider. Human culture was notoriously complex about relationships, but she'd heard they sometimes formed bonds across species lines. It was considered strange by most galactic civilizations, but humans seemed to embrace strangeness. "In my culture," Zara began hesitantly, "there is a ritual, a bonding ceremony that would make me part of another's family. It would give me legal protection under Federation law." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Like marriage?" "Similar concept," Zara nodded. "But I understand if you cannot—" "Hold up," Marcus interrupted. "Let me get this straight. Your people abandoned you because they think you're not good enough. And now you need someone to legally bond with to avoid dying alone on this rock?" Zara lowered her head in shame. "I know it sounds desperate. It doesn't sound desperate. It sounds like your people are idiots, Marcus said bluntly. And honestly, I've been alone for most of my adult life. My family thinks I'm crazy for working in deep space instead of settling down on Earth. Maybe we're both the rejects nobody wanted. The Catherian looked up in surprise. You would consider this? Even though we barely know each other? Marcus scratched his head, thinking about his grandmother's advice about helping others. She'd always said that sometimes the universe puts people in your path for a reason. Look, I'm not saying it would be easy. Cross-species relationships have their challenges, but dying alone isn't acceptable. Not for anyone. The ritual requires both parties to declare their intention before a Federation witness, Zara explained. There is a legal office 3 levels down, if you are serious about this offer. The human maintenance worker looked around the empty terminal. His shift ended in 2 hours, and then he'd be heading back to his small quarters on the residential deck. Tomorrow would bring more of the same routine he'd followed for the past 3 years. Maybe it was time for something different. What would happen after? Marcus asked. I mean, practically speaking. As bonded partners, I would have the right to accompany you wherever you go. Your ship assignments, your home world, anywhere Federation law recognizes the Union. Zara's voice grew stronger as she spoke. I could work, contribute, be useful instead of just waiting to die. And emotionally? I mean, would this be just a legal arrangement, or... Zara's scales shimmered slightly, a sign of nervousness among her people. I do not know human customs well. Among Catherians, bonded pairs often grow to care deeply for each other over time, but I would not expect you to pretend feelings you do not have. Marcus found himself smiling. You know what? Let's go file those papers. We'll figure out the rest as we go along. The walk to the legal office was quiet, both lost in their own thoughts. Zara couldn't believe this human was willing to help her without asking for anything in return. Marcus wondered what his family would say when they found out he'd married an alien to save her from abandonment. The Federation clerk, a multi-armed Centauri, looked up from her paperwork with obvious boredom. Purpose of visit? We need to file a cross-species bonding agreement, Marcus said, placing his identification on the counter. The clerk's additional eyes focused on them with sudden interest. Both parties are consenting adults, aware of the legal implications, and free to enter this agreement? Yes, they answered in unison. Very well. Please place your hands on the scanner for genetic and psychological compatibility assessment. As the scanner hummed to life, Zara felt a moment of panic. What if the machine declared them incompatible? What if this was just another rejection waiting to happen? But the scanner beeped green, and the clerk's expression shifted to surprise. Interesting. You show an unusually high compatibility rating for a cross-species pairing. 93% psychological harmony and adaptive potential. Marcus and Zara exchanged glances. Neither had expected that. Please state your intentions for this bonding, the clerk continued. I, Marcus Chen, enter this agreement freely to provide companionship and legal protection to my partner, Marcus said clearly. I, Zara of the Catherian lineage Veltar, enter this agreement freely to bond with this human and contribute to our shared future, Zara added, her voice growing stronger with each word. The clerk stamped their documents with efficiency. Bonding complete. You are now legally recognized as life partners under Federation law. Congratulations! As they walked back toward the residential decks, Marcus carrying their new legal documents, Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Thank you, she said softly. I know this was not your plan for today. Marcus chuckled. Honestly, it's the best thing that's happened to me in years. I was getting pretty tired of talking to maintenance bots all day. What happens now? Zara asked. Now? I guess we get to know each other. Figure out how two completely different species can make a life together. Marcus paused at the entrance to his quarters. It'll be an adventure. As the door slid open to reveal his modest living space, Zara stepped inside what was now her new home. The human had saved her from abandonment and death, but somehow she felt like she might be saving him from something too: loneliness. Neither of them could have imagined how much their simple act of kindness would change not just their own lives, but the fate of entire civilizations in the years to come. 6 months had passed since Zara and Marcus became bonded partners, and their life together had settled into a comfortable routine aboard the mining station. Marcus had requested a transfer to the agricultural section, where his new wife's natural affinity for plant cultivation proved invaluable. The hydroponic gardens flourished under her care in ways that amazed the entire crew. "Your metabolic processes seem to accelerate plant growth," Dr. Sarah Kim, the station's chief botanist, observed as she examined Zara's latest harvest. "The yield is 30% higher than our best projections." Zara's scales shifted to a pleased blue-green hue. "My people were farmers before we became spacefaring. Perhaps the instinct remains in our biology." What the humans didn't know was that Zara's supposed genetic defects were actually dormant abilities that activated under different environmental conditions. The Catherian Council had been so focused on their rigid genetic standards that they'd missed the adaptive potential hidden in recessive traits. Their marriage had started as a practical arrangement, but genuine affection had grown between them. Marcus learned to read Zara's scale colors like emotions, while she became fluent in human expressions and customs. They complemented each other perfectly, his steady reliability balancing her intuitive creativity. The trouble began when a Catherian diplomatic vessel arrived at the station. Ambassador Thekvar was everything Zara was not: tall, imposing, with scales that gleamed like polished metal and telepathic abilities that could influence weaker minds. He represented the new Catherian colony government and had come to inspect the station's operations. "There have been reports of a rogue Catherian living among humans," he announced during his first meeting with Station Commander Rodriguez. "This individual was exiled for genetic inferiority and should be detained for return to our worlds." Marcus felt ice form in his stomach when he heard the announcement over the comm system. He found Zara in the gardens, her scales pale with fear. "They want to take me back," she whispered. "But the colony has no place for rejects. They'll put me in a work camp until I die." "Like hell they will," Marcus growled. "You're a Federation citizen now. We're married. They can't just grab you." But when Ambassador Thekvar met Zara in person, his reaction was not what anyone expected. His mental probe, intended to demonstrate her inferiority, instead revealed something that made his eyes widen in shock. "Impossible," he breathed. "Your telepathic capacity is extraordinary. It's been suppressed, but the potential—" Zara stepped back, confused. "You said I was defective, that my mind was weak." "Your abilities were dormant, yes, but exposure to diverse thought patterns has awakened them. Human mental structures are so chaotic, so unpredictable, that adapting to them has strengthened your neural pathways beyond normal Catherian limits." The ambassador's revelation sent shockwaves through the station. Dr. Kim immediately ran tests that confirmed what Thekvar had sensed. Zara's brain showed activity patterns that surpassed baseline Catherian norms by significant margins. "This changes everything," Thekvar declared. "The colony needs individuals with enhanced abilities. You must return with me immediately." "No," Marcus said firmly, stepping between the ambassador and his wife. "She's not property you can reclaim just because you decided she's useful now." The ambassador's scales darkened with anger. "You dare interfere with Catherian affairs, human? This female belongs with her own kind." "This female," Zara said, her voice carrying new authority, "makes her own choices, and I choose to stay with my husband." What happened next surprised everyone, including Zara herself. Her telepathic abilities, newly awakened and untrained, projected her emotions outward with devastating effect. The ambassador staggered backward as her feelings of love, loyalty, and determination crashed into his mind like a tidal wave. "By the ancestors," he gasped, "your power is uncontrolled but immense. With proper training, you could become one of our strongest telepaths." "I don't want to be strong by your standards," Zara replied. "I want to be valued for who I am, not what I can do for others." The standoff might have continued indefinitely, but Dr. Kim's research terminal chimed with an urgent alert. The data she'd been analyzing while they argued showed something remarkable about human Catherian genetic compatibility. "Everyone needs to see this," she announced, displaying her findings on the main screen. The genetic markers that the Catherian Council classified as defects aren't defects at all. They're adaptation sequences. The holographic display showed complex genetic chains that seemed to respond to environmental pressures. Zara's genes are designed to adapt to new conditions. Living among humans has triggered dormant sequences that enhance telepathic ability, disease resistance, and cognitive flexibility. Ambassador Thekvar studied the data with growing amazement. "These are evolutionary advantages we didn't recognize. Our genetic selection process eliminated exactly the traits we need for long-term survival." "How many others did you abandon?" Marcus demanded. "How many defectives were actually carrying your species' future in their genes?" The ambassador's silence was answer enough. The Catherian obsession with genetic purity had cost them their most valuable adaptive traits. "There's more," Dr. Kim continued. "The compatibility scan from your bonding ceremony showed 93% harmony. I've been analyzing why that number was so high." She brought up another display showing neural pathway comparisons. "Human emotional chaos actually stabilizes Catherian telepathic abilities. Meanwhile, Catherian mental discipline helps humans focus their natural creativity. You're not just compatible, you're synergistic." Zara looked at Marcus with wonder. "We make each other stronger." "The implications are staggering," Dr. Kim added. "If this pattern holds true for other human-Catherian pairings, you might be looking at a new form of enhanced intelligence. Hybrid vigor on a cognitive level." Ambassador Thekvar's entire worldview was crumbling around him. Everything the Catherian Council believed about genetic superiority was not just wrong, it was backwards. "I must report this to the colony leadership," he said finally. "They need to know what we've lost by abandoning our defectives, and what we might gain by reconsidering our policies." "What about Zara?" Marcus asked. "Are you still trying to drag her back against her will?" The ambassador looked at the couple with new respect. "She is exactly where she needs to be, but I hope perhaps others of my people might be willing to learn from your example." Over the following weeks, word of their discovery spread through Federation channels. Scientists arrived to study the unique human-Catherian bond, while ethicists debated the implications for species integration policies. More importantly, a ship arrived from the Catherian colony carrying 36 genetic rejects who had heard about Zara's story. They'd stowed away on supply vessels, desperate to escape work camps and find new lives among the humans. Marcus found himself coordinating the largest cross-species integration project in Federation history. His practical maintenance skills proved invaluable in organizing housing, work assignments, and cultural orientation programs. "I never imagined saving one person could lead to saving so many," he told Zara one evening as they watched human and Catherian children playing together in the station's recreation area. "Perhaps that is what makes humans special," Zara replied, her scales warm amber with contentment. "You save one life at a time, without thinking about the bigger picture. But those small acts of kindness ripple outward in ways you never expect." The station had become something unprecedented, a truly integrated community where two species lived and worked as equals. The Catherian refugees brought skills in biotechnology and mental disciplines, while the humans contributed engineering expertise and emotional resilience. But their success had also attracted unwanted attention. Reports were coming in about other species taking notice of the human tendency to help undesirable individuals from rigid societies. Some viewed this as admirable. Others saw it as a threat to established order. Ambassador Thekvar had returned to his colony with evidence that would revolutionize Catherian society, but change was never easy. Conservative factions were already denouncing his findings and calling for stricter isolation from human influence. Meanwhile, Station Commander Rodriguez received a classified message that made her blood run cold. The hegemony, a powerful alliance of traditionalist species, was sending a cultural assessment team to investigate the station's dangerous precedent of species mixing. As Zara helped human children learn to read Catherian emotional scales while Marcus taught young Catherians basic engineering, neither knew that forces were already moving to destroy everything they'd built together. The small act of kindness that had saved one abandoned life was about to become the center of a much larger conflict, one that would determine whether the galaxy's future lay in rigid separation or unprecedented cooperation. The Hegemony Task Force arrived with 7 warships and an attitude that made the entire station crew nervous. Led by Supreme Assessor Vexoth, a crystalline being whose species valued absolute conformity above all else, they came to determine whether the human-Catherian integration represented dangerous deviance from natural order. This mixing of species goes against fundamental biological principles, Vexoth declared during the first assessment meeting. Each race must maintain genetic and cultural purity to preserve galactic stability. Marcus felt Zara's hand tighten in his as they sat in the packed conference room. Around them, dozens of human Catherian families waited to hear their fate. The children, who had never known anything but integrated community life, looked confused and frightened. With respect, Supreme Assessor, Station Commander Rodriguez replied, "These families are Federation citizens with full legal rights. They've broken no laws and have contributed significantly to our colony's success." "Laws can be changed," Vexoth replied coldly. "The Hegemony Council has drafted legislation to prohibit interspecies breeding and integration. These aberrations threaten the natural order that has maintained peace for millennia." Dr. Kim stood to present her research data. "Our studies show that human-Catherian partnerships produce enhanced cognitive abilities, increased disease resistance, and superior problem-solving skills. This isn't degeneration. It's evolution." "Evolution is chaos," the assessor snapped. "Controlled development within species boundaries ensures predictability and social order. What you call enhancement, we call contamination." The tension in the room was building toward an explosion when little Kira Chenveltar, Zara's 6-year-old adopted daughter from the refugee group, stood up. Her scales showed the rapid color shifts of distress as she addressed the towering crystal being. "Why do you want to separate my mama and papa?" she asked in her innocent voice. "They love each other. Love isn't wrong." Vexoth's faceted eyes focused on the child with disdain. "Love is irrelevant to species purity. You are a genetic anomaly that should not exist." Marcus felt something snap inside him. The maintenance worker who had once helped a stranger in need became a protector facing down forces that threatened his family. He stood up slowly, his calm voice carrying across the silent room. "You know what I've learned living here for the past year?" he said. "Every species in this galaxy has some group they consider inferior. The Catherians had their genetic rejects. You probably have your own. And somehow humans keep being the ones who end up taking in everybody else's cast-offs." He gestured toward the mixed families around him. These genetic anomalies you're so worried about? They built the most efficient hydroponic systems in this sector. They solved 3 major engineering problems that had stumped our best experts. They created art and music that brings different cultures together. Irrelevant achievements, Vexoth declared. The risk of genetic contamination outweighs any temporary benefits. Genetic contamination? Zara finally spoke, her telepathic abilities unconsciously projecting her emotions to everyone in the room. The love she felt for Marcus, the gratitude toward the human community that had welcomed her, the fierce protectiveness toward the children. All of it washed over the assembly in waves of pure feeling. Even Vexoth's crystalline structure seemed to vibrate in response to the telepathic surge. "Impossible," he whispered. "Your emotional projection should not affect my neural matrix." Dr. Kim was frantically checking her instruments. The telepathic resonance is creating a harmonic frequency that's affecting every species present. I've never seen anything like this. What they were witnessing was unprecedented in galactic history. Zara's enhanced abilities, strengthened by her bond with Marcus, had created a telepathic bridge that allowed direct emotional communication across species barriers. For the first time, beings with completely different neurologies could literally feel what others experienced. Ambassador Thekvar, who had returned with reinforcements from the reformed Kytherian colony, stepped forward. "This is what we've discovered on our world, Supreme Assessor. The abandoned defectives didn't just survive among humans, they evolved. Their abilities have expanded beyond anything we thought possible. And it's not limited to Kytherians," Commander Rodriguez added, producing reports from across Federation space. "We've been getting similar results everywhere humans have formed relationships with refugees from other worlds. Enhanced abilities, improved health, breakthrough innovations." Vexoth's crystalline form was now vibrating visibly as Zara's telepathic field affected his normally rigid thought patterns. "This sensation, these emotions, they are chaotic, but—" "Beautiful," suggested Marcus. "Yeah, that's what we call it. Love, hope, the feeling of belonging somewhere. Your perfect order doesn't have room for any of that, does it?" The Supreme Assessor was struggling with concepts his species had eliminated from their culture millions of years ago. Through Zara's unwitting telepathic projection, he was experiencing feelings that his people considered weaknesses: compassion, wonder, the joy of discovery. "The hegemony maintains stability through control," he said, but his voice lacked its previous certainty. "These feelings you project create unpredictability, chaos, and growth," Dr. Kim interrupted, showing new data streaming in from her instruments. "Your own neural activity is increasing by 40%. Your problem-solving capacity has temporarily enhanced just from exposure to these emotional frequencies." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The very thing the hegemony feared, emotional chaos and genetic mixing, was actually enhancing cognitive function across species lines. Young Kira tugged on Vexoth's robes with her small hand. "Do you feel better now? You sound less scary." The crystalline being looked down at the hybrid child, who should not exist according to everything his civilization believed. Through Zara's telepathic field, he could feel the pure innocence and love radiating from the young girl. It was transforming his consciousness in ways that millions of years of rigid thinking had never achieved. "I do not understand these sensations," he admitted. "But they are not unpleasant." Marcus seized the moment. "That's all we're asking for. The chance to not understand everything but still try to build something good together. Your perfect order kept the peace, sure, but it also kept everyone separate and alone. The humans have given us something our own people never could," added Veltar, one of the Kytherian refugees. "They gave us hope when we had been labeled hopeless. They saw potential where our leaders saw only defects. Ambassador Thekvar stepped forward with a data pad. Supreme Assessor, I have a proposal from the new Catherian Council. Rather than enforce separation, why not establish research partnerships? Study these enhanced abilities systematically. If emotional integration truly improves cognitive function, imagine what controlled experiments might reveal. Vexoth was still processing the overwhelming sensations flooding his consciousness through Zara's telepathic field. His species' cold logic was being challenged by direct emotional experience, and the results were both terrifying and exhilarating. The Hegemony Council will need to review all data, he said finally, but perhaps a limited research program could be permitted, under strict observation. It wasn't the victory Marcus had hoped for, but it was a beginning. The Hegemony was willing to study, rather than immediately destroy what they'd built. Over the following months, researchers from dozens of species arrived to study the station's unique community. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Not only did human-alien partnerships enhance abilities across the board, but the emotional resonance created by their bonds was actually improving mental health and creativity throughout the galaxy. The rigid barriers between species began to soften as more worlds requested human, cultural advisors, refugees and outcasts who brought new perspectives to stagnant societies. What started as one man's simple act of kindness toward an abandoned alien had become a galactic movement. Zara, once considered genetically inferior by her own people, became the first director of interspecies emotional integration for the Federation. Marcus, the maintenance worker who just wanted to help someone in need, found himself designing integration protocols that would be implemented across thousands of worlds. Their small family grew as more abandoned individuals found their way to the station. Humans, Catherians, and eventually members of dozens of other species created a community unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Standing in their garden one evening, watching their adopted children from 6 different species playing together, while the station's sunset simulator painted the sky in warm colors, Zara turned to Marcus with scales glowing the deep gold of complete contentment. "Do you ever regret that day in the transport terminal?" she asked. Marcus pulled her close, marveling at how natural it had become to love someone whose very existence had once been impossible to imagine. "Never. Best decision I ever made was helping a stranger who needed someone to believe in her. Even though it led to all this chaos, the politics, the research programs, the responsibility for changing how entire civilizations think." Marcus looked around at their impossible family, their thriving community, and the future they'd helped create simply by refusing to let someone die alone. Especially because of all that, turns out saving one person can save everyone. As the artificial stars came out above their integrated world, neither Marcus nor Zara could have imagined that their simple love story would become the foundation for the greatest period of growth and cooperation in galactic history. Sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin with nothing more than one person refusing to walk away from someone in need. The universe was vast and often cold, but wherever humans went, they carried with them the radical idea that everyone deserved love, belonging, and a chance to prove their worth. It was perhaps the most dangerous and wonderful gift any species had ever given to the galaxy.